I'm talking today with Dan Martinez. Dan is the Tribal Emergency Manager for the Warm Springs Tribe. Thank you, Dan, for spending some time talking with me this morning. Dan, could you give us just a little bit of your history with the tribe and how you came to be in your position?
Well, in 1980, we started our first fire department in Warm Springs, one of the first tribal fire departments, and I was hired as planted in my mind as an EMT and fire medic. And so I progressed to being the fire chief in 1996 until 2014 when I retired, and the tribe has asked me to assume the role as the emergency manager, which I thought would be just a 2-year time to spend in emergency management, but you could say that was 6 years ago, so I'm still around. So the objective now, obviously, with the COVID-19, the fires, and as you indicated, the water crisis, I simply just can't let go. We have a lot of unmet needs, and so I'm here just kind of work with the tribes and other partnerships with other agencies in the private sector and federal agencies and state as well to take care of the community of Warm Springs. So I've got about 42 years in this public safety side. So, which is interesting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your service to your community. That's very, very admirable.
I'm sorry, Jim, I spent 4 years in Vietnam. I'm a Vietnam veteran. Served in the embassies overseas. So when I got out, I honestly said I need to do something better than being in the field hunting down the enemy. I need to focus on saving the communities. So that's how I got involved as a fire medic. I just thought I'd share that piece of it. So
no, that's really admirable. I was in the service as well, so I really admire what you're doing, and I really admire your sense of giving to your community, Dan. So I just want to pay you a lot of respect in that regard. Can you give us an overview of the Warm Springs Tribe and what they're and then let's talk about some specific needs or some specific what the situation really is, because I think people don't really have a good idea of how large Warm Springs is, and then how they've been impacted by some different situations such as water and the fires and COVID. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Absolutely. Now, the Confederated tribe, there's 9 tribes in the state of Oregon. Warm Springs, the Confederated tribes of Warm Springs is a treaty tribe, which is different from federally recognized tribes. So we have a trust. There's 2 tribes in the state of Oregon, Umatilla and Warm Springs, which is unique in the sense of we are a treaty tribe, again, as opposed to a federal agency tribe as being recognized. Although there's 9 tribes, uniqueness is Warm Springs is a closed reservations that covers 1,000 square miles with a population of about 4,200 people within. So with that being said, we're a tribal sovereign nation like most other tribal nations, but the uniqueness about it is we're a non-public law 280 tribes, which doesn't give jurisdiction to the outside sources, which doesn't make a lot of sense to folks. So we, within the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, we have our own court, our own police, our own bylaws, and our own constitution, which works hand in hand with the state as well as the federal, as well as the United States of America. But uniqueness behind that is there's 2 trust responsibilities within the treaty rights of the Confederate Tribes of Warm Springs, and that's the Bureau of Indian Affairs and Indian Health Service. So those 2 federal agencies are the trust responsibility written into the treaties to protect our tribal nations. When we step out of those bounds within those treaty rights, we risk the treaty interpretation of who's responsible to serve the tribal membership within. So the uniqueness about that is, or the challenge that I have is reaching out to different partnerships to assist the tribes in its unmet needs, if that makes sense. Because we take, every time we bring in an outside source, it nicks and picks at the treaty rights. So I got to be very careful about the outside source coming in. So with that being said, we are 1,000 square miles. We have 10 million acres, and I want to emphasize 10 million acres of ceded lands in lieu of sites along the Columbia River, allowed to fish for subsistence. The 10 million acres is in reference to hunting and gathering the roots, the huckleberries, things to feed our people. Well, obviously, this last summer has been devastated by the wildfires, which kind of isolated the people from just the bare necessities, even their roots. The berries were hard to find. The smoke was a challenge. The fires, the COVID-19 issues, the water crisis. At the same time, the fires were going on, we were dealing with water breaks within our community. Now, earlier I said a trust responsibility. Well, the Bureau of Indian Affairs is supposed to fix the water system. Well, they don't have the funding source. Their focus was obviously the fires, and that's their priorities. So we're not always the first in line to get the needs or the unmet needs for our nation. So I have to turn to the outside source. As an example, in March of this year, not only did we have the COVID-19 crisis within our community, we also had a water crisis where we couldn't even drink water. We didn't have water pressure. We didn't have running water within the good population of Warm Springs. So I did the next best thing, and we asked for donations from several sources, from the private sector to water distribution centers, to brew companies that were making water for their tribes. Just to give you a perspective, we gave out 600,000 gallons of drinking water, one bottle drinking water. And we're continuing to do that because of the water system not being safe to consume. So we're still in that crisis. We're still accepting donations for water to serve the community. And with the COVID-19, it's also become more of a challenge because of washing hands, sanitation issues. So, so we've got an abundance of hand sanitizer. Well, as you would know, Jim, 4 months ago, we couldn't even find hand sanitizer. We couldn't find the simple products, of just cleansing the people of within not only our community and other communities. We couldn't get PPE. You had to search high and low. I mean, even the price of a face mask these days is outrageous. I mean, you go to the store, it's $16 for a set of 10 of surgical masks. So I had to put it out there for needs for cloth masks that could pretty much take care of a population of about 3,800 people within. Not to mention our guests, our workers that come to work to Warm Springs, our firefighters that had to be protected because of the Lion's Head fire, which was, again, I'm kind of drifting from water to major fires, as you had indicated. And these fires were very devastating, from air quality issues that you folks had to deal with too in the valley. I mean, it was devastating. On top of the COVID-19, now you minus all the water, food, the hardship placed on the community that's already in a crisis. I'm not saying I'm not comparing with any other community, but I'm saying it's devastating. When you're in that home front and you see it all happening, homes being destroyed as a result of the fires, families losing, elders losing their lives because of the COVID-19, the frustrations with the political agendas with the votes. I mean, everything just seemed to be so unbalanced, Jane. And we can't practice our religions because we're restricted. We can't practice our funerals that we are accustomed to in a traditional way because of the number of folks that are allowed within. My own son died from the COVID-19.
So sorry.
My own son died from this disease. My older brother caught it, who lives in Albuquerque. My cousin caught it, so it's going to affect the family one way or another. And I'm certain all of us could connect that one family that we may know that's been affected. So, and you add all these other challenges, as I said earlier, the water, the fires. Thank God the fires are out, at least 90% of them, but we still have smoldering fires out there along Lion's Head, Brighton, Birch, and Timothy Lake. So it's still cooking out there, believe it or not. We still have firefighters out there. But when you add all that ingredients to already depressed economic disadvantage to this community, it's a challenge that we're never going to fix it, but at least we could do is have compassion to give what we can to help this community out. And as I was telling you, Jim, we don't ask for help. I mean, it's not within our, I don't know, at least in my age bracket, we were always taught to be survivors off the land. go fishing, go hunting. But the newer generation doesn't hesitate. The college students I have working here do not hesitate to ask for help because they see it as a way of survival. Where I look at living off the land, being an elder, in that area, picking the huckleberries, but that doesn't exist because of the fires. So anyhow, if that doesn't give you an overall briefing, I don't know what will.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you. I want to ask specifically because there's a lot of confusion about exactly what the water situation is. Because people have seen news stories that there has been part of the water lines rebuilt. I myself trying to research it to be able to give people answers, and I'm a bit confused. Can you tell me exactly what is the water situation there right now? Do you have funding? Do you need funding? What is going on, and what's the plan?
Well, just to give you a perspective, this water crisis started way back in 2014. Earlier I said the BIA was a trust responsibility. Well, to make the issues more clear to folks, the water system originally was constructed by the Bureau of Indian Affairs that housed the boarding schools. That one of the facilities I'm in is part of that school system. And so they put in this water system that was supposed to provide the water, its quality, its consumption, its use as, including irrigation. Well, it failed. It failed back in 2015 totally. And when I say totally, first of all, it comes out of the Deschutes River, which is the sixth dirtiest river in the United States. So it floats down from the three dams that are within that are borderline along the reservation, around Butte Dam, Pelton Dam, and then our regulating dam, and then it farms. It provides a water source to the agriculture areas up between here and Madras, and all that runoff goes back into the chutes and make matters worse. So we're at the bottom end of that. So we're siphoning this water into a water treatment plant that's 30 years old, that's going through a 90-year-old piping system that's feeding this community. So yes, there's a temporary fix in place, Jim. I know what's going on, but it's hard to explain it, that we're looking at a 1920 system that we're trying to build a new system across the creek to service the community of Warren Springs. So it just makes sense. Where I'm at is basically what's known as agency headquarters for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. So once it crosses the creek, which is about 2 city blocks from my office, that's all Warren Springs housing and residential. So on this side, you're on the business side, if that makes sense, if you're familiar with Highway 26 and the casino. But the minute you cross over the creek, it's residential. And it's that failure of that stretch from the Deschutes River to Warren Springs. It's a 9-mile stretch that's defected and aging and deteriorated. But we fixed it to cross the river to get the water to the residential. So, in all due respect, it's going to take about $40 million to repair the whole system from the Deschutes River treatment plant to the community of Warren Springs. It's businesses. But right now there's a temporary fix that crosses the creek to get the water to the residents. And yes, and we spend probably $8-9 million repairing that system. But we're trying to hold, because of their treaty rights, again, the BIA is the trust responsible. Who has that trust to fix the system? Well, obviously it hasn't been done. So we're in court. We're challenging them. The state of Oregon set aside emergency funding here this last summer, I believe $3.7 million to assist us in getting the water source to the community of Warren Springs, its residents. That provides the health care, the early childhood program, the residents, and it serves a good 3/4 of the population. So it's confusing. We don't anticipate a final repair of an absolute final repair until probably the year 2022 or 2021, when it's finally going to be an actual $40 million repair. And as you would guess, Jim, as each day passes, the price of it changes. Right. So what was once a $9 million repair job is now $40 million. I mean, what's it going to be like next year? $45 million, $55 million? And the Bureau of Indian Affairs just doesn't have the funds to repair it. And so we're in more of a arbitration and litigation and trying to figure out where we're going to get the funding sorted as opposed to just fixing it. And as a tribal nation, again, like I said earlier, we nick and pick at these issues. If we fix it utilizing our money source, then we're taking the trust and responsibility of the source that's supposed to be repaired. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, no, it does make sense. And it seems to me that the long and the short of it is you're still millions and millions of dollars short of having the funding to actually fix the problem. And am I paraphrasing too much in saying that what you've been doing is trying to put a Band-Aid on it just to get by to serve the residential and the business community there, but you're not keeping up with it by any means?
Exactly. Good way of phrasing it.
So do people there in the residential area, do they have clean drinking water?
They do today. It's periodically being tested. It's periodically, there's some folks that simply don't trust it. Again, we look at that 630th river in the United States.
Right.
You've been along the district river. I'm not certain if you have.
I have. Yes, sir.
And you don't even see the blue in it. All you see is a solid green. And so that's what you're drinking. By the time it goes through the filtration system, it goes through the water treatment plant, and it gets into the tanks. I mean, it feeds into these 2 million gallon tanks, holding tanks to feed the community. And we're constantly got to clean them out to get the allergies out of it, the contaminants. I mean, if that makes any sense. So there's a lot of critical issues or a lot of challenges in making sure that when you drink that glass of water, is it the best water we could provide for our community? And I'm saying it's not. I'm saying you don't smell, if it doesn't smell good, it don't taste good. And a lot of folks still come to get water, particularly our elders and our young kids. I mean, so we accept, for instance, sterile water, we accept drinking water, we accept these, the water source that's both going to be beneficial to our elders and our newborn kids, electrolytes is important. So we do dispense quite a bit. Was I prepared to do that? Absolutely not. When you give out 600,000 gallons of drinking water, and they don't want them to get out of their vehicles, so every gallon of water that had to be handled by hand and then delivered by hand resulted to like six, 7 times of handling that 1 gallon of water or 160 tons. So there was a challenge.
All right. Well, let's shift to the impact that COVID has had on Warm Springs. Can you tell me a little bit about what the situation with COVID is right now? And I'm just going to start by saying you have my most sincere condolences on the loss of your son. I can't imagine as a father myself how that must feel, and especially to be trying to shoulder the weight of trying to help your own community deal with this situation. Can you tell us about how COVID is impacting Warm Springs, please?
Well, thank you for those remarks, Jim, and that matters to me. To lose any family members, particularly in a situation where it shouldn't happen to begin with, because the political perspectives are not really looking at the danger signs of how we could, reduce the losses of the COVID-19. Warm Springs is 100% in mandates. Everybody wears a mask. I mean, that's the absolute. We have what's known as Resolution 101. If you choose not to wear your mask, we're going to put you in the tribal court system. We don't care what reason why you choose to. The fact that you're a threat to others makes it a mandate to say you've caused harms to others, so you're going to go through our tribal court. So you don't ever want to go down that road. And so we've enforced that. Yesterday morning, I met with tribal council as a matter of sharing information. We reduced our workforce of 800 to 50%. So half the workforce is not at work today. Only essential employees were this is the 4th time we shut down as a result of the COVID-19.
And that's to protect people, right, Dan?
Yeah.
It's to protect people, right?
It's common sense. You get employees that are not feeling well or feeling sick, or they have sick kids at home. We're telling them to stay home. It's not worth your life or anybody's life, or even spread the germ. A good 13% of our population is now affected as a result of folks taking those risks. I mean, they have to shop, so they go to the store. I mean, as I was telling you the other day, for us to get to a feasible market like Costco's, like a lot of folks like to shop, that's a 100-mile round trip for us, 110 miles for most folks. To go to Madras, Oregon is a 35-mile, round trip. Doesn't sound like much, but when you add snow, the challenges, and all the people don't have fuels because they're economically are at a disadvantage. So there's a lot of challenges, and so they take the risks, and rightly so. They got to feed their families. So as a matter of just history, and I just got this off the press, we got a today as we sit here, there's 56 active cases in Warm Springs. With a population of 3,000, that doesn't sound like much, but it's 13% of our population. Right now, we did 132 tests yesterday. In this small community, that's a lot of tests. A good percentage of people, particularly our elders, have died from the COVID-19. Particularly our elders that are so dear to us, both on the traditional, customary, custom ways that we're trained, religious that we've been taught, is gone. I mean, from veterans to the elders, it's taken their lives. In fact, 10 of them have died just in the last couple of months. We're doing all we can to prevent the spread. We have a radio station. We've been broadcasting. I'm part of the COVID-19 emergency action team that briefs the community every morning at 7 to give them an update. Now, that's kind of like, internal. But, we figured if we could communicate better, maybe we could get that prevention component out there. I mean, as you were saying, it is about awareness and education prevention. Not to get politically out of line here, but when you have a president of the United States that's denying it, or it makes it hard for our younger people to really understand what's really going on. We have tribal people here that they still think it's not real. I mean, our own people, because of the political perspectives, and I don't want to get involved with that. So how do you convince them that it is? So like any other community, you just have to educate, make them aware of those challenges, wear your mask, it's mandated. I hate to tell anybody what they don't want to do, that they have to do. But if it's going to save your life, what more could you say, Jim? I mean,
right. So how many active cases do you have now, Dan?
Right now we have 56 active cases.
Okay.
Active. Now we've got some of them that are being housed in isolation, quarantine. We provide food for them, as I told you the other day. I am constantly filling food boxes that are donated by you folks and others that is constantly being moved out of our facilities.
How do you quarantine these folks? How are they quarantined, and what is going on there?
We have a setup at our Indian Health Service. It's a drive-through test site. So folks that through contact tracing or they don't feel well, they go through the sources of getting their temperature, the quick assessment, triage it, and then they end up in what's known as an orange tent. So they get tested with rapid or with the state sources. And within 2 days, 3 days, or whatever, we find out they're positive. We immediately engage to find out, contact tracing. When you have a family of 9, that we most recently had, the whole family is contaminated. But if there's one in there that isn't, and that's just been the case here most recently, you have one that isn't positive, and all are positive, one is not negative. Excuse me.
Right.
We have to separate that individual from the positive cases because of the large families. Now, just to give you a perspective, the average household in Warm Springs is about 8 or 9 per household. Well, that's common here in Warm Springs because of economic, there's kids,
sure.
people never leave their homes, it seemed like. A 40-year-old still lives with their mom, those kind of things. But anyhow, so what we try to do is quarantine them from the positive cases. We utilize the Canada Village Resort, motels, and, again, that separates the family. We don't want to do that. We don't want to separate the families, but what else can we do to protect?
You have to. Yeah.
So it's been a challenge. So although 56 cases that are active probably represents, and I'm not exaggerating, probably 2,300 people within, because we're all related. They've been there. We've had funerals. They've been to the gatherings. Again, put your guard down for a second, and boom, you
sure.
That mask off for 2 seconds. Somebody sneezes, boom. I mean,
Right.
it's a virus that we can't control, Jim. It's an evil virus. So my point being is, my responsibility is this came about last February of this year, and we were the first tribe to say, hey, we need to go to the food banks. We need to start storing food and give out canned goods, mostly dry goods, rice, beans, whatever, and start packaging this stuff up. Well, everybody laughed at us. Yeah, this is not a virus. This is going to go away in a month, Dan. I mean, we all heard that, but we had to be a step ahead. So I sent out a message to the outside sources, from Neighborhood Impact to the food banks, the Oregon Food Drives, you folks. And to this very day, we get little baggages of canned goods. I mean, we're not asking for anything besides just dry goods for now, because I don't have a refrigeration system. I don't have any way of giving out meat. And although folks want some proteins,
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about what your needs are, and let's talk about how others can help you and help the tribe, and those families that are there. And I do understand. I think everybody may not be aware, but you've got just the Native American community, the culture. Many of those homes are multi-generational. Most of those homes are multi-generational. And have been. That's just the culture, and that's what goes on. But it does impact when you talk about you just laid off 50% of the workforce in Warm Springs, on top of the unemployment that already existed due to COVID, due to just how far out there you guys are. And how difficult it is to find gainful employment, being 50 miles out from a large part of civilization. Let's talk about exactly what goods the community can help get to you that would help you the most. Let's talk first about food. What type of food goods would help you the most to have there?
Well, we had a list of items we kind of was reviewing, Jim, and it seems like, believe it or not, the Native Americans love this spam. Good luck in finding it. I put an order out for spam, and it is just like, it just doesn't exist here in Central Oregon because
I couldn't find it the other day when I went looking for it. So. Yeah. Okay. So spam. But what you're talking about there is really like canned goods, canned meat.
Canned good, and it's a meat that we can't, again, when folks can't pay their own power bill because of economic issues, they know they could open up a can of spam, as simple as it sounds. And so we look at that as, and a lot of folks eat that locally, and they know it's a dry canned good that they could put back in the shelf and preserve it. So spam was one of the big components of a need here in Warm Springs, and we're out ourselves. And then we always order like chili. What I could tell what they don't like is like Gonzmo's beans, and because they're not, I don't know, they just don't like that stuff. But canned goods is what we've been after: corn, string beans, healthy stuff. And then I got to go through the process of making sure it's not expired for whatever reason. Folks clean out their shelves, donate it into an agency, and you realize the can's been on the shelf for 10 years. So I've got to be safe. So every can that comes through here, we check the dates. We want to make sure it hasn't been manipulate it in any way, because we don't know what the outside source wants to do to the inside. And so that's just some of the challenges I'm faced with. So we look at canned goods, we look at rice, we look at beans, that they could prepare for themselves, oil products, vegetable oil. Native Americans are not healthy conscious. They still eat fried bread with chili. They still, we're not the best eaters. Although we like deer meat, we like salmon, we like roots, we like huckleberries. Well, that's not an option right now. I mean, it just
Right.
doesn't because of all that's been going on. So spam's been a big one. If there was a ways I could get meats and products such as that because they need their proteins. I mean,
Right.
you can only live so long off spam.
Right.
You need fresh bread, milk, and but I just simply don't have those facilities to store
Right.
that stuff. So we've been looking at dry goods mostly. Jerky is a big one. They love their jerky, and it seems like jerky could really take up your appetite so you don't eat as much. So if you could think of those categories of canned goods, we've been giving out lots of produces, but that doesn't happen this time of the year as often as it did a couple of months ago where we had fresh produces. So it's not as unique today, but they could still, Jim, I'll just put it to you bluntly. We'll take whatever we could get. As I told you the other day, we
Yeah,
need
sure. Sure.
we-
It helps. Yeah. It does help the people. It does help the people on our end though to have things to target on. So canned vegetables, canned soups, canned anything that's not expired, that's easy to prepare, bags of rice, bags of beans, bags of anything that is fairly easy to prepare
Yep.
and doesn't require refrigeration, right?
And it's a quick fix for the families. I mean, because we're isolating them, and we're taking them away from a routine that they may have at home. We may be putting them there, separating them. So
let's talk about what your needs are outside of food and water. Okay. Is there a need? I've had inquiries here over the last couple of days. Do you have any need for any services? Do you have any need for any services that the community could perhaps provide or that would be of assistance to you folks? Do you have a need for any sort of shelter or any sort of shelter items? Would that help any of the families, the homeless, anybody that you have there in your community?
And thanks for asking, Jim. Last night we serviced 19 folks, homeless folks. Yeah, the warming shelter was just adjacent to my building. As I told you the other day, we set up tents, and so families that are traveling through or being displaced on a local level, we put them in tents so they're not so. It was the best way of separating them at the 8, 9, 12 foot. We tied up our gymnasium for that reason. So if you ever had a chance to see it, I don't know, you were here last time. We set up tents so the kids feel like they're camping. They're homeless and they're in need of everything. We got coats that came in the other day, donated from, I believe, the Big Five out of Gresham, or out of Portland, I'm sorry. And so it's socks, underwear, comfort kits, hats,
gloves, mittens, socks.
Get it? I mean, it's a winter season, so we got to think winter now. In the summer, it was the opposite: t-shirts. So we have to think the seasons. If you ever seen these young kids and the struggles they're dealing with economically, I don't care what race they are, it touches you to see the struggles they had. They're out of gas. They don't have money. They don't have a place to sleep. I mean, my God, we had a couple of people die in Bend, Oregon already because they had no place to sleep. We get calls from everywhere. Hey, do you got room in your shelters? So if you think less of it, that they're less than the rest of us, then you shouldn't be in this field. Right. You shouldn't be asking what you could provide. You should know what you could be providing: sleeping bags, coats, socks. Yeah.
A lot of people need to know, Dan, though, in all fairness, though, a lot of people need to know where to focus and what the big need is. We had a woman who stopped by here the other day, because we told her to focus on children's coats, size 1 through 5, and children's hats and mittens. She found that incredibly helpful. She went around the block, neighbor to neighbor, knocking on doors and raising money. They raised over $1,000, and she went and bought nothing but children's coats, hats, and mittens with it. So giving people something to focus on and to target on is very helpful for them, because they don't know what you're getting versus what you're not. They want their money to go as far as it can to help people, right? So hearing that from you is very, very helpful, I think.
Thank you for saying so. I have a Red Cross trailer. We're one of the few tribes that has our own Red Cross charter. So I have a Red Cross trailer, and I've been depleting the sleeping bags and stuff, and the trailer itself is set up for disaster preparations. If we have a major earthquake or the Cascadia events should happen, or a tsunami along the Oregon coast. So I'm always thinking, like, this is what I need in place for 100, 200 people. So I've been depleting my source out of that disaster preparedness trailer and giving it to the warming shelter. So sooner or later, we're going to run out. So, when I say the unmet needs, we're referring to sleeping bags, blankets, pillows, stuff that.
Pillows? Do you need pillows?
Pillows. Although I ordered some through the Red Cross, and they give you like what they give you on the airlines, and when you're homeless and stuff, you get what you take. But
right, it's better than nothing, but it's not much of a pillow, right?
It ain't much of a pillow. So and we need towels. So we got the shower set up.
Okay.
Towels. I got plenty of, as you know, in the summertime, we had the VI set up shower facilities for those folks that didn't have water. So I got, what we did is we asked people that had gone to, for instance, the motels, and they had the little shampoos that,
sure,
throw them in our bags and we bring them home, and just for whatever reason.
Okay, so do you need new
shampoo,
toiletries? Do you need shampoo and conditioner, shaving cream, razors, deodorants? Okay. All right. That's very helpful to know, because if we give people a target, I have a lot of faith in humanity. They're going to go out and try and meet it. Right. So part of what I've promised people after this conversation is I'm putting together a spreadsheet. I don't know if you have one. If you do, emailing me a spreadsheet of what your needs are that we can pass out to, or that we can divvy up to the different groups that are trying to come to our aid to support us and supporting you. That is so helpful to them, because it gives them a target. Let's talk about, too, the warming shelter. Do you need another warming shelter? Do you need any type of shelter itself, like structures or tents or any of that?
We, I know Dot had gone for lunch. I had her working early this morning, and so we will send you that list. I did know we brought it what was, because of our water, we don't want it to freeze. We got it housed right now in this old school building where the heat's not there. So we thought about a Connex. I don't know, one of those mobile type of Connexes that we could store our water source into. I have little room right now for any more, items such as sleeping bags and stuff. My trailer that I have right now is being depleted, but I'm also trying to keep it stocked up with water that that I'm getting in. So point being, the only other challenge I have right now, Jen, to be honest with you, is I got college kids that are working for me. Once they go back into school, I'm left there. I'm on my own too. So point B is, I've been struggling. We get these 5-gallon containers of water for dispensing for our elementary school, our early childhood program, and for folks that don't like drinking water. Well, each one of those is 43 pounds. I don't know if you ever lift one of those 5-gallon water containers. And so I get them in bulk. I get them in trays of 32. We've been hand unloaded. And so I feel so kind of greedy right now to ask for what we really need is a forklift, as I told you.
Well, you mentioned that to me yesterday, Dan, and I want you to know that we have 3 different agencies right now
Are you serious?
running you down a forklift or trying to, and I've even given them further guidance that you don't just need a forklift, you need an outdoor forklift.
Yes.
Regular forklift doesn't do you any good. We need an outdoor forklift that can run on gravel or dirt or whatever type of road it needs to get on, right?
Thank you, Jim. And
No problem.
Selfish to ask.
You're not selfish. It's not selfish. That's realistic. Because when people are having to work in such close proximity, that's a COVID risk. Okay? When people are having to work to unload this stuff and you've got it on pallets and it can just be easily moved around, you shouldn't hesitate to ask, Dan.
Okay,
hey, I wanted to say one thing. Zoom has like a 40-minute limit on a call.
Okay, yeah.
So we're approaching that, and I've only got a couple more questions, but if we get cut off, we'll Zoom right back in, okay? All right. So let me ask you, is there any other equipment other than a forklift that you need that would be helpful?
You brought up fencing and a Connex that we could store this stuff into. The folks here are so desperate they've actually broke into the facilities to get water. I mean, that's pretty sad that they have to break in to get water, and some of them have stolen the canned goods. I mean, that's how desperate this community is on the outside, and rightly so. When you're hungry, and you know where the food's at, you're gonna go for it. So, point being is, you mentioned fencing, motion light detectors. I mean, I walked into this.
Yeah.
Had I known, if any of us would have known this was going to happen 2 years ago in preparedness of it, I would have had a fence. I would have had a Connex. I would have had storage for water. I would have had food in stock. But this is hitting me one day at a time. And so I don't have all I have a lot more unmet needs than I do needs, because
let's start working through them, buddy. Let's start working through them, because we have a small army of people here that I can segment out that will go. Some people will go look for fencing, and some people would go look for a forklift, and some people would go look for this or that. And I'm not going to make you any false promises. I don't know what we can find and what we can't. Exactly. But if we know what to go for, then we can really do it. So fencing, motion detector lights, things to help with security. Would it help? Even like, I'm thinking, like, those piggyback trailers that you see that people use for storage. Do you have any of those? Because those are very secure. They're steel containers, right?
Yeah, the Connex is what we're referring to, at least.
That's what you're referring to. Okay.
Yeah, and we could secure them. They're metal, and they come in 24, 40 footers. Okay. And Dot just came in.
Hi, Dot. Okay, I also had a question. This is a great question. With all the homeschooling and with all that's going on, are there any needs that are specific to children or adolescents in the way of learning? Are there needs that could be fulfilled to help children with learning or help children in dealing with this situation?
We've been accepting donations for school supplies. Again, okay. We're telling these people to stay home, but yet they have kids that are learning the distant learning programs at home, which has been a challenge as well. So school supplies, normally we do it in the summertime, like any other agency. We have a giveaway of school supplies. This year it didn't happen because of COVID-19. And Dot is kind of motioning me. Yeah, they need school supplies.
School supplies.
I'm so out of touch with that. I don't even know.
And Dot, is it all ages? You need it for everything from preschool all the way up through high school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to have you email me later your spreadsheet and your list. Okay. And if you can make sure that that's on there. Dan, I think one of the things that I've learned through this journey, because I was totally ignorant toward it. And I don't want to be. I want to be very respectful. I'm very respectful of people's culture. Can you tell me the best way that this fundraising should be approached, and how we can best serve you to do this fundraising on your behalf. We don't want to say anything wrong or do anything wrong. We don't want to, is it okay for us to say where it's going? Is it okay for us to say that we're raising it on behalf and that it's going to the Warm Springs Tribe? Can you tell us the best way for us to approach this?
I think you did it just right on. Contributions donation to the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. I think we just got to be careful with saying because of the water crisis, because we're not always in a water crisis. We're repairing it section by section. And like I said, we have water today, but tomorrow it may break again because of that section of the BIA. So I think what would probably work is donations for the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs given their crisis situation. And then,
okay.
Would that make sense? Remember, the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, when you say Warm Springs, we are the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. You see the three teepees. We're made up of Warm Springs, Wasco, and the Paiutes, and that's what makes up the Confederated. So we always call it the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs.
Okay.
So that would be the appropriate way of addressing it, and contributions and donations. And if you need an assist, if you need any indicators of what we need, we could do that. And for the issue of why you're providing it, we could also do that too in the private setting, rather it's water, rather it's coats or winter supplies or school supplies, because then it doesn't confuse, like you were saying, you were confused about the water issues. Well, we are too, to some extent. We're holding the BIA as a trust responsibility. They're just not dealing with it. So I'm just as equally as confused as you are, but I'm on the home front dealing with the needs of drinking water. So I think it would avoid any issues with the water, but we are accepting drinking water.
Yeah, you need bottled water, and you need good water, and you need that. So I don't want to detract away from that need.
Exactly.
Right. So okay.
So right now, just to give you a perspective, if I was to add it all up, I think we got enough for 34 days if we had to feed 3,000 people a day. I mean, and that's utilizing those 5-gallon jugs. Again, 43 pounds each.
Right.
Oh my God.
You need the forklift. You need the forklift pretty bad, don't you?
The big forklift pretty bad.
Okay.
Like,
well, we're going to do our best. We're going to do our best.
Jim. I got confidence in you folks, and the Walls of Mom. I see them as a group that wants to help. I know they had a little conflict with the Black Lives Matter, but we're a different source right now.
I was on the phone this morning with their CEO. Was on the phone yesterday with their people multiple times. They want to help all communities. They want to help. They want to help. They're like us. We don't care what color a person is or what culture they're from. We want to help everybody. If a human being is in need, that's why we're here. And the cultural thing is just something on top of it. That's not the biggest consideration. It's people in need. Okay.
Exactly.
And everybody wants to be respectful of that. So if there's any way that we can help benefit your culture, if there's any way that we can be more respectful of your culture, we certainly want to do that, because that's just who we are as human beings. So anything that you can tell us on that front, or that if we need correcting sometime, please do. Our feelings aren't going to be hurt.
Without hesitation.
Okay.
Can I put God here real fast, and you could just.
All right. Hi, Dot. Yeah, I met this young lady the other day when we dropped off goods, and I can't tell you how many people I have bragged on you about. Okay. Because I was really impressed at the group of college students that you had organized, and that you were, and it really struck us. We did a little crying on the way home, because the need is so great there that even before we could get the van unloaded, people were pulling up asking if you were going to be helping the community.
Yeah, they did. Thank you.
Yeah. So is there anything that you can tell our viewers, or the people who are watching this, any sort of message that you can give about how much their help is contributing or helps you in what you need to do, or any way that we can help you that maybe we haven't talked about yet?
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. It's been, wonderful getting the donations and everything that you have brought. We are going to distribute the masks that you have brought on Monday with a Thanksgiving food giveaway that somebody has contributed and worked with us. So thank you for everything that you have done, for everybody that has brought things. It goes a long ways here in the community, and I just got to say thank you to everybody.
You're very welcome. It's the least we can do. And if we need to do more, you just let us know. You don't even hesitate to ask, all right?
Okay.
Because that's what this is all about. It's just human beings helping human beings, okay?
Yeah, so, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank all those college students for doing what they're doing. It's very admirable. Because you guys, people don't realize, man, you guys are placing yourselves at risk. You were all wearing masks and gloves. You were all being very careful to protect us and to protect each other, and that's really noted. And it's appreciated. And I think that's a powerful message that goes out to the community that's giving too, because when they give, they want to know that they can come and do it safely.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thank you for being so attentive to that.
Yeah. And thank you guys for communicating everything that you have communicated with us, just to help be safe. And when you're taking pictures and videos, we don't mind pictures and videos because that helps us also get the word out for the community. Everything that we do and everything that you have done is just all great work for our community and the needs that need to be met.
It takes a village. It takes a village. It takes all of us, okay? It takes all of us. So thank you very much for that. All right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Well, Dan, I want to thank both of you. I want to thank you and Dot both for taking time to talk with us today. Yeah, no, she's a real sweetheart, and we really appreciate your dedication and your work. It's very admirable. And so, maybe part of what we could even work on too, Dan's worried about you guys going back to school. Maybe we can try and figure out a plan to kind of deal with that too, right?
Yeah.
Together we can all accomplish great things. That's our attitude.
Alrighty, Jim.
All right. Well, thank you guys very, very, very much. Dot, what's your last name?
Thurby.
Thurby.
Yep,
Right.
Thurby.
All right. Well, so everybody, today we've been talking with Dot Thurby, who's assistant to Dan Martinez. Dan is the Tribal Emergency Director or Tribal Emergency Manager for the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. I want to thank both of you for taking time to talk with us today.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
All right. We'll talk soon, guys.
Okay.
Okay.
Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.